He wondered the atrocities humankind was capable of committing. The majority of those housed below were ill, mentally or physically. Most were poor victims, the outcasts of society. The opposite, people so blessed, others coveted their lives. Bryn Chapman, Where the Bluebirds Fly. Today I will be speaking on the Salem witch trials, presented by me, Mesha Young. Witches and trials. Today I will be speaking on the history of witches, the Salem trials, and the outcome of the trials themselves. Let us begin. Before we can go into the trials themselves, I will speak on the brief history of witches and why they were condemned to be such. Now, before witches were known to be as they are now, women who would cast spells on you or turn you into toadstool even if you just anger them a little bit, they were actually known to be wise women. Women who helped out and worked alongside God to bring peace and care to those on earth that He loved so much. These wise women had made house calls, dealt with infertility, cured impotence, and even delivered babies. They committed no atrocities, but this had maintained not long enough after the settlement of Indo-Europeans or the Hebrews that had decided that what they were doing was against the laws of the Bible and decided to condemn them and ban the practice of witchcraft and also paganism. These male-centered religions had destroyed what wise men once were and turned them into evil figures that did not help alongside God or obey His rules. Instead, they turned them into women who did nothing but hurt and kill instead of actually doing something to help the people as they were once doing. And this only worsened during the Black Plague. And I'm sure everyone knows of the atrocities and the pain and the lives the Black Plague had taken away. This is where the very first witch hunts began. Mobs of people would hunt down women, mostly women, and those they believed to be witches, because they thought that this was their punishment and the anger that witches had brought upon them. They would mostly look for poor, widowed, or single women and decided that they must be punished for their crimes of killing innocent people, even though it was not them that brought this plague. Instead, they decided to burn these women, kill them, execute them, hang them outside of churches to make them an example. They thought they were advocates of the devil. They had saw them as nothing more but infidels and horrible and just plain dirty. And it only worsened as the years went on. And by the end of the 1600s, 60,000 people, a majority of them of women, young, old, widowed, poor, single, who did nothing, lost their lives due to being accused of being witches, just because of these male-centric views that made these women so evil, these women that were once revered as deities, nothing more than evil and scrupulous. It's honestly crazy. But there was nothing we can do, as we still today have our own modern witch hunts and places in the world that people would have never noticed. But anyways, moving on to the trials. Moving on to the trial, I will be speaking about the accusers and the accused. This whole mess started when 7 girls started having seizures, fits, painful convulsions, and illnesses that shook the entire village of Salem. And it brought the adults to wonder what happened to these young girls that made them feel so much pain, that made them have illnesses that was so painful that they actually had convulsions and seizures. And so we start with our 2 main girls that brought this whole mess to its knees. And that will be Betty Paris and Abigail Williams. The 2 girls were among the 7 that were having these seizures and fits, and they were being pressured by the adults to tell them who did this to them instead of what. The doctor in the village was very incompetent, so he said that it was the work of witchcraft, and therefore everyone believed him. So the adults pressured the girls to tell them the names of the women or the people that brought them such pain. And so the girls, who were very stressed out from the pressure the adults were putting on them, decided to lie and point out three women. And these women were Sarah Good, a beggar, Sarah Osborne, a woman that was shunned by the village by her immoral acts of stealing inheritance money from her children and having relations with one of her servants after her husband died, and a slave from Barbados named Tituba. These women were arrested by the mob in the village and brought down to trial. They tried to plead their innocence by blaming each other, which was not helping their case at all. And then when it came down to Tituba, she had told the entire story about her dealings with the devil and how Sarah Good and Sarah Osmond were also involved with the deals with the devil and what she did. Stories that were so vivid that even the judges were so interested in knowing what was going on. And Tituba said it was not just her or Sarah Good or Sarah Osborne, but there were more people who were dealing with the devil just like her. Therefore, the judges had seen not only just these three women, but a whole infestation of witches that they must bring to justice. And so, the women were accused and sentenced to death. The first being Sarah Good, who was hanged and executed just because she was accused of being a witch. And the rest of the women and people that were brought down because of the lies of Tituba, who sealed their fate, was only just the start of it all. Judgment Day, October 18th, 1692. 25 citizens and a reverend had wrote a letter to their governor to condemn the trials as they had gotten out of control to a farther extent. However, their governor ignored their pleas, and the trials continued. They were executing three more people, therefore making 19 people who were unjustly and cruelly executed under the guise of being a witch. The governor did, however, reach out to the village at some point to tell them to stop the trials as they were cruel and unnecessary. He, however, received backlash, and the village turned on him, accusing his own wife of being a witch. He then, in late May, pardoned all those who were being on trial or held in jail for being witches, but they had to pay their jail fees in order to get out. The people in the village tried to continue to hold the trials, but the governor was not having it. And so the council and the governor in 1702 had passed a law which made the Salem witch trials unlawful. And it was not until 1711 where their rights were restored to those who were tried and accused to be witches, and restitution was paid to their heirs. And it was not until 250 years later that the state of Massachusetts had officially apologized about the trials to the heirs and the descendants of those who were killed, or those that were participating, or at least their ancestors that participated in the trials, killing 19 people and pressing one to death because he did not want to plead guilty or the case that he was a witch. From burnings to hangings, the word of God is the justice they speak to justify their actions. From the wise women who were stripped of their good name, to those who were simply burned and hanged for being singled or widowed or poor, to those who were killed based off misunderstandings and lies and unjust feelings of fear and pain and agony. These people who were unjustly killed, who were hurt, who were picked out from the herd and were decided to be witches. This was no fair trial. In no way, even in the earlier years. It was something that people could take their frustrations out on, something they could be mad at, people they could kill and feel good about killing, just so it can justify their actions of not only being very religious and religious zealots, but also to justify their actions of doing the right thing. In the end, no one was in the right. The trials were unjust, as I have said many times, cruel and unfair and unlawful. It did not bring peace, only more pain and suffering and sorrow, even to those in the earlier centuries. It did not bring any conclusion. It did not bring any real conclusion to it all. It was just simple, unjust, unruly murders. And that's all they were ever being. These trials, these murders, these killings have brought a stain upon not only history itself, but the state of Massachusetts that no one will ever forget. Not even history can forget these things, no matter how much we try. When you think of these trials, why these wise women were stripped of their good name, or why the people in the earlier centuries were unjustly killed for the reason of being witches, there is no real conclusion for these murders. It is simple atrocities that are committed by human beings under the name of God and therefore obeying the laws of the Bible. But they were not obeying any laws. They were simply committing murder. Murder that was not helping anyone nor their own situation. There is nothing people could do here. They only followed the mass hysteria mob mentality. But in the end of the day, it was a simple, unjust murder, and there is nothing history can do to change it. Thank you for watching.